Hi there. I've been asked a question about assessment marking and the process that we go through and what we look for when we mark. So what I thought I'd do is just put together a bit of a video, a voice recording of the process that I go through as an ELA when I mark an assessment, just to give you a bit of background information about that. And hopefully it can help you understand where you need to put your focus when you're answering your assessment. The question, I think, came about because they were finding it difficult to fit within the word limit and wondering whether they needed to demonstrate an understanding of all the areas of the learning materials in just a brief overview, or actually spending the word count and going into detail of one specific learning area and showing how they really understood that, which is a fantastic question and is one that we get asked quite a bit. So what I thought I would do is just put together some information, and hopefully it will answer that question, but it will also give you a bit of an overview of how we mark and what we look for when we're marking. So the short answer to that question is not an easy one to answer, unfortunately, which is probably not what you want to hear, but it does actually depend on the assessment task. So I don't want to give you a blanket, yes, you should do that, and no, you shouldn't do that. It really does depend on the unit that you're doing and also what the assessment task is. But what I will aim to do is just to give you an overview of how we're marking, and then at the end of it I'll have a quick chat about assessment 2 and the sorts of things that you could have included in that in relation to the specific question, and I hope that that's going to help you out. But of course, if you've still got more questions or new questions come up, please do get in touch. I'm happy to share this information with you because it will help you on your learning journey as you continue through university. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just talk about how I would go about attacking a university assessment to start with. So the first things first is to read the question. Now that sounds really obvious, and some people think that's a bit stupid. Why would she say that? But you would be surprised at how few people read the specific question. And I'm talking about actually getting the highlighter out, highlighting all the important things in the question, and working out what it is that we would like to hear and see you demonstrate. Okay, so the first thing is, I've got on the screen here the fundamentals of marketing assessment 2. This is the first point of call. You go in and you have a look at the assessment overview. Okay, and you read that, and then you go into the assessment details, and then you look at it and see that it's asking you for a report. Okay, so if we scroll down, it then gives you a little bit more information. This is a hypothetical situation, and we want you to present your insights to the marketing manager of your brand and company. All of this information is crucial, and it will help you put together your assessment. So the first step is reading the question, and really reading the question. Students often stumble at this point as they really want to show us what they know and understand, and just include that even if it's not actually relevant to the question, which is great. But the bad thing about this is that it really does eat up your word count very quickly, and whilst you might be on the right track and what you are actually writing is correct, we aren't able to mark it that way because you've missed the point of the question, or it's not really what we're looking for. So I can't emphasize enough that first step. So step 1 is to really read the question. And at this stage, if you do have any questions, that's when you ask your ELA. Okay, and if the collaborate session recording is available, go over that, because we go through this in a lot of detail as well. What is the purpose of the assessment? What are we trying to get you to understand, and what are we trying to get you to explain? We know there's lots of information out there, but we really just have to make it specific to an assessment. So that's the first step. The second step is to actually analyze the rubric. Okay, so I'll just see if I can find that in my screen. Oh, here it is. Okay, the rubric is your key at university, particularly at Swinburne University. This is what we use to mark your assessment. Okay, if people are not familiar with the rubric before or using one, It does take a little bit of time to understand, but it is absolutely crucial. When I start marking an assessment for the first time, if I haven't marked it before, I go through the rubric with a fine-tooth comb. I pick out exactly what they want the student to demonstrate, and then I allocate marks to that. So this is what you need to do as a student. Go through, have a look at the high distinction category. Okay, this is what we're looking for. Whoops, the high distinction one. This is what we want you to demonstrate. Okay, so focus and aim towards that part of the rubric. So if we take this assessment 2, for example, you can see in the rubric that 35% of the mark is for describing the 5 stages of the consumer decision-making process. Another 35% is describing relevant consumer behaviour theories and concepts. Okay, so that's all up, straight up, 70%. You can see by looking at the rubric that that is where we want you to focus your attention. We want you to outline the 5 stages of the consumer decision-making process. Each stage you go through and you do that. And then not only do you do that, but you need to tie in some relevant theory to back up your thinking. And this in assessment 2 is where a lot of people fell down. They did a really good job at describing the 5 stages of the consumer decision-making process, but they failed to bring in any or minimal theory to back up their thinking. So what does this actually mean when I say bring in some theory to back up their thinking? Well, it's just that you're not writing about your opinion and you're actually bringing in those concepts to demonstrate your understanding so that you know. So in answer to the question that we had at the start of, which led me to make this little video, is should I just cover one concept or theory and focus on really demonstrating my understanding of that? So in this instance, probably, or you could bring in a couple that tie in together, but you don't need to go over everything in this particular assessment because you just don't have the word count. Okay, I think it was 200 words each for each of the stages, so that is not a lot of words. So for example, in the first stage, need recognition, instead of just saying this is what need recognition is and this is how it is relevant to the particular product that I've bought, you would bring in, say for example, and talk about an imbalance between a desired and actual states, and then bring in some research to explain what that is, and then you could go on to tie that into internal or external stimuli to show that sometimes it's driven from internally and other times the need or the want is driven externally. And again there you would just bring in some secondary research to talk about internal and external stimuli, just to back up what you're actually saying. So I hope that makes sense and it does sort of answer the question a little bit more in that stage. But overall, by looking at the rubric, you're actually working out where you need to focus your attention and what we are wanting you to do. So I hope that does make a little bit more sense. And then we move on to the next stage, or step 3 for me, which is if there is a template available, which in this unit, they're very kind and they do give you a template to look at, which again is really crucial. So you don't need to feel like you have to follow it exactly to the T, but it is giving you the sorts of things again that we are looking for. So if you do have a template available, a report structure example, or even if you do have an example piece of work available, which again we do provide in this unit, but other units don't do that. Go over that and work out, okay, this is what they want me to show. So again, if we look at section 1, which is the need recognition, we've got 200 words to explain what need recognition is, okay, and how it comes about, as well as linking it into the theory. So this is where your 35% for your criteria 2 and criteria 3 are going to be focused. So it's asking us, again, you get your highlighter out. In this section, should focus on why the consumer needs the product rather than the particular brand of car or whatever you're talking about. Okay, so a lot of people fell down and used up a lot of their words when they actually just went on to describe what the product was and why a person would need that particular product, or they focused on just why they needed that product. But what the question is actually asking is what may trigger a consumer to purchase this product. So in this case, when you're looking to answer this particular question, what may trigger a consumer to purchase this product, think about linking it to one specific theory and tying that into that one. So this is where you could bring in an imbalance between a desired and actual state and provide examples relating to your product as to what may trigger that. And give a few different examples of what may trigger, not just one. We're presenting an overall marketing strategy to a company. So they need to not just think about one consumer, but why different consumers might want to purchase this product. Okay, and then you focus on what the actual problem or need is the consumer facing. Again, try to bring in another theory or tie it to the first theory that you talked about and answer this question. So it's really just asking you two questions. You do a little bit of an introduction at the start. Need recognition is this, and then 100 words on each of the questions that it's asking you, and tying that into a theory that you've read about to demonstrate that you actually understand what you're learning. So in answer to the initial question that we've been talking about, you don't need to go into all the different theories relating to need recognition. You need to tie it in to these two questions. Okay, you're very fortunate that you've been given a template like this, and this is really what drives my marking. So I go through and look and say, oh, have they actually outlined the triggers? Yes, they have. Okay, marks there. Have they identified what the actual problem or need is that the consumer is facing? Yes, they've done that. Marks there. Awesome. And then for the next bit of the criteria, I go and say, well, did they bring in a theory to explain that? And have they used an external resource? Yes, they have. Okay, for both of them, full marks. Beautiful. So it is really about breaking down the question into specifics and working out how you're going to tie that into the learning materials. Okay, so when you've got the report structure given to you, use this, okay, to guide where you need to go and how much information and how much detail you need to go into. I hope that's all making sense for you. So that is step 3. Check out the template if you've got one. Step 4 is going to find your easy marks. So what I mean by that is the remaining mark allocation in the rubric. So for this assessment, it was the quality of the introduction and conclusion, the presentation format and attention to detail, and the referencing. Again, focus your attention on this high distinction section of those parts of the rubric and work towards that. These should be really easy marks for you to get, and as you work through university, your referencing will improve and you should actually be able to get close to full marks for that once you're doing it in the correct Harvard style for both your in-text referencing and also your reference list. And then for your presentation format and attention to detail, this is another area that it is relatively easy marks to get. Okay, you need to make sure that your report's well structured and cohesive so that it follows, it flows, it's easy to read, and anyone who picks it up can actually follow what you're trying to say. And this section also includes your spelling, grammar, and just how you express yourself. So what tone you use, is it a formal business tone, is it really casual? So they're the things that we look at for this particular thing. So I call them the easy marks because they're not so much, they're things you're going to be doing in every assessment and tying them in. So as you go through uni, you'll get better at both of those areas as well as your introduction and conclusion. So there you have it. They're my 4 steps of how I go about marking and how I'd also tackle a university assessment. I hope that it has been helpful, and I do hope that it answered that initial question but also provided you some more information. If you do have any more questions or need more information, please do post them below and I'll answer them for you. But I do hope that this is helpful, and I'm sorry it's so long, has gone way over, but I'm hoping it's going to be useful information for you. Thanks for listening.